I would say that it is brown.
A sparkly, grounded spiritual essence.
Deep burgundy, rustic.
Like pink ice. I don't know, that sounds a little weird, but like pink because you have that little feminine edge to it, but ice because at the end of the day it's still like cold, still has a cool little look to it.
Pretty.
Like a beautiful cloudy day.
You know how like Scooby-Doo talks, but no one really understands him but his friends and the people that take the time to understand him? That's my masculinity.
It's relaxing.
She's not what the world needed her to be or wanted her to be. It's mine.
Okay, so there's obviously lots of different ways we feel and experience masculinity. Different colors, shapes, and ideas come to mind. But have you ever stopped to ask yourself what masculinity truly is? We know what society has told us.
Strong.
Tough.
Rugged. Beefy. Like really, like beefy guys.
Leader. Boss.
Overbearing or extremely overprotective.
Brave. Aggressive.
Extremely aggressive. Attitude.
Competitive.
Bad attitude.
Dominant.
Provider.
Power.
And control.
Better than femininity, for sure. It's better than femininity for some way, I don't know.
And of course,
Man.
Of course I would think like male.
Of course, men.
Male, men, that one's like a given almost.
In the world's eye is like this set of performances or attributes like strength, aggression, power, like anything that expresses a particular kind of domination over another thing. That is not the tell-all story of masculinity, because it is also a part of toxic masculinity culture to only speak to masculinity that is framed around men rather than speaking to masculinity as a whole and speaking to our masculinities as well.
The first time I can remember truly realizing that I was masculine was when I was maybe about 7 or 8 years old. I would always play basketball at the community center in my neighborhood. And afterwards, people would come up to me and ask me if I was a girl or a boy. And I was confused. I didn't understand. It was like, I'm a girl. Of course I'm a girl. And that's the first time people would be like, well, you look like a boy. You sound like a boy. You dress like a boy, so you must be a boy. And I would literally get into it with people like, no, I am a girl.
I've just been masculine my entire life. I had no idea that's what it was, especially because growing up, I didn't have like the father in the home like that. It was more so me and my mom.
I learned the difference between being masculine or feminine from being a fraternal twin. When you are a girl-boy twin, everything is always separated by gender.
I always wanted to be like my brother, right? Like, I wanted to do everything that he did.
Blowing up Capri Suns, rolling in grass, and kind of like feeling like wanting to be one of them.
I was really into like what the boys were doing.
I was with the boy cousins and I had like my uncles, and it was something about being around them and the energy that I got from them that was a lot different from like hanging around my aunt, my mom, or my female cousins. It was something that I could relate to more. And even with like male classmates growing up, when I went outside, I wanted to tumble and do whatever with the guys, and I didn't know that it was like, okay, well that's you being a tomboy, you're being masculine versus feminine.
I was always a tomboy, literally since the day I was born, I would say. And my brother, he always encouraged me to do the more masculine type of things. Like we would play football together, we would play video games together, we had wrestling matches in the basement.
Growing up as a tomboy, that's when I first started kind of like really feeling what was normal to me, because everything else seemed abnormal.
My sister is a very girly girl. I have an older sister, 3 years older than me. She knew that I was gonna be a girl when I was in my mom's stomach, even though my mom was like, it might be a boy. She's like, no, it's a girl. So her expectation was like, I wanna have a girl. I want my mom to have a girl so we can play makeup, have dress up clothes, do all the girly girl things. I did not like doing those things. So from as early as I can remember, that kind of conflict is when you realize like, hey, like you like other things that are just different from what your sister likes.
I did notice that I wasn't really into wearing things that were considered feminine.
I don't know about y'all, but I don't know if y'all had to wear the patent leather shoes with the socks, with the frilly socks, you feel me? And then the tights with the frilly socks. That was me. When all I wanted to wear was a pair of slacks, some khakis, and a FUBU shirt.
There was no discussion about masculine and feminine. You know, I was always had to wear skirts. I grew up in a very, very religious home.
I was just more comfortable wearing things that were restricted to men by society standards. So I didn't really like dresses. I didn't really like skirts.
I always liked wearing boy clothes. Never really liked buying girl Bratz dolls. I like buying boy Bratz dolls because I thought they had better clothes.
I remember being in high school, like trying to figure out like how to dress myself, and like I was like I'm queer, so I want people to like really know it. And so then I was like, so I'll dress like Kate Mendig from the L Word and like Tegan and Sarah.
I only like making boy Sims on my PlayStation. So it was kind of like little things in my childhood where I was like, okay, you like doing things in a boyish, tomboy way.
I just had this always in me. It was always in me. It contrasted with people, you know, of my same gender or age, and when they were just like, you know, women that were just, you know, completely cis women doing their thing in our society, versus me, who was kind of going against the grain.
I looked at boys a lot. Like I looked at like how guys were like wearing their flannels or what, like, or I don't know, I'm still trying to figure it out. Like, where's the underwear line for where the pants goes?
Growing up, I didn't really necessarily feel comfortable in things that were considered to be feminine. And that's something that just continued as I got older.
It took me a while. It took me a long time to understand it and to accept it.
I think I more recently have come to learn about my masculinity and become comfortable with it.
I want to say it was just a smooth curve discovering masculinity. Like, you know, I can do little boyish stuff and then have the girly stuff, but it really wasn't like that, honestly, because a lot of how I experienced femininity was out of performance.
When I understood it, I still put it like in the back of my everything because I wanted to make sure that I was giving my parents what they needed. I was giving my friendships what they needed. I was catering to that and left myself out. It wasn't until I was maybe 25 and I was like, you know what? None of this stuff is working. You know, that's not your boyfriend. He never was your boyfriend. You know, that dress you wore last weekend, you look like a fucking fool. Why'd you have that on? I've always been comfortable in my presentation, but it was like I knew that I was so different from what I was being a part of. Like having homegirls who are, they homegirls, you know, and I had to be a homegirl too, but that wasn't me. It was so uncomfortable. I knew that I wasn't anything like that. And I had to accept the fact that I don't have to do that stuff. I don't have to put that dress on, those heels, because you're going to the club Friday night. Be me, be free.
I can't say that watching television allowed me to see a reflection of myself in narrative form. In fact, I didn't really fully see a reflection of myself. You know, I saw pieces of myself, right? So I saw pieces of myself in Khadijah on Living Single, right? I saw pieces of myself in, who else? Griggs, right? From The Wire, right? But this doesn't happen until later on in my adolescence. Early adolescence, I really don't see it outside of daytime television, right? And most time it's that spectacle of daytime television. So it's not really a clear reflection, right? But it's something. I'll be watching Ricky Lake all the time and I would see these masculine studs come on TV and I'm like, yo, wait. And then I think on Jerry Springer, I saw this trans guy and I was just like, wait, what? There's a different way of being? What?
One of the first even characters that I'd seen in a movie that helped shape my curiosity or questions that I had around my masculinity and the experience of that juxtaposed with my intersectional identity. And that was Cleo in Set It Off.
Cleo from Set It Off. I remember my cousin calling me that when I was younger because my mom was braiding my hair and she didn't like that. She was just like, no, that's not who my daughter is. That's not how she is.
Seeing Cleo have this woman lover and also very much be a masculine person on television I felt really connected to this person. I'm like, yo, like, I like the straight back cornrows too. Like, I'm a hooper, I'm whatever. You know, I like the white undershirts, and you know what I'm saying? I would love to just be chilling and have my girl next to me. You know, it was like obviously a hyper romanticization at that time, but I really, really loved the imagery that this is a person. This is a human being who we don't get to see all the time.
I was like, oh, she a badass. I just love how she owned it. She definitely, I think, helped them feel safe in certain ways. And that's something I did growing up with my mom and sister. You know, I really didn't, in the household, I was more like a doer and what you need this, like hands-on. I was a go-getter, but that's how I felt with like the women around me. So like, I related with Queen Latifah in that way and set it off.
That was kind of a space that didn't influence me to go in any one direction, because I do think the character of Cleo also, you know, produced kind of like this very like masculine person wants to be a man kind of imagery. And I would hear a lot of that stuff, you know, like when I got to the point where I could watch the movie, you know, there was always talk around, you know, oh, these gays or this, whatever, like just wanting to be a man. And that was like the first questioning I had. I was like, well, do I want to be a man? Like, am I a man? And I'm just kind of like modeling this experience of manhood because that's who I want to be. And it set me back a lot too. What I took from watching Cleo and seeing Cleo kind of move through this film was that it was possible to embody masculinity outside of manhood.
Music has always been a true, like, really big passion of mine. Growing up, there were a couple of artists that I looked up to where, looking at them, I'm like, I feel, when I see them, I feel something like, okay, this is how I feel, or this is how I see myself. I'm old school, so for me, it was people like MC Lyte, Queen Latifah, The Brat.
The Brat, growing up, she was a bit of a tomboy, but other than that, in the media and society, it was always pushed to be more of a feminine woman. So I didn't see a lot of masculine women that I could look up to and identify with.
MC Lyte has always been my inspiration when it comes to music and just expression and how to use your voice. And Queen Latifah, same thing with her. And she just, the way that she transitioned from like music to production to directing, writing, acting, and to this day still doing all of that and not worried about her preferences, her sexuality, or how people look at her. She literally plays any and every role how it needs to be played, and that's that right there, you feel me?
I watched stuff like Brink and Christina Vidal's character in that, how she was able to be roller skating and be with the guys and didn't treat her any different than anybody else. I thought that was really cool. Or Reggie and Rocket Power.
Living Single, Maxine, and Queen Latifah. It was just, and again, in my younger years, I had no idea what that connection was, but as I gotten older, it's like, that's what that was. I always was drawn to Maxine's character because in my head as a child, I was like, is she gay or is she straight? At the end of the day, she still had this persona, and to me that meant that it was okay for her or whoever to be who they want and dress how they want and act how they want, be loud, be harsh, be aggressive, be strong, be whatever they want to be in that moment, and not really conform to any expectations that society may have.
That was the tough part about my experience, because as I was developing and growing, I didn't have anybody that represented me at the time. We had Ellen, you know, Auntie, she was there.
Her show used to come on, and Ellen normalized that outer appearance. So what society would consider as masculine via outer appearance, wearing like men's wear, that was something that she actually normalized for me. It made me feel like it was okay to like those kinds of things.
Auntie Ellen was definitely a role model for me as I was finding out who I was. Little by little, I started seeing myself, you know, taking her style, you know, like little by little. Like, it works, you know? I don't have to wear my clothes extremely big. And the era I was coming out in was big clothes, you know, jabots, white tees, Air Force Ones. That was my look. I had to tighten it up, right? And Auntie Ellen taught me how to tighten it up.
I just love the way she dressed. I was like, you know what? You dripping and just, I like it. And I just took after that so much. Blazers and that typical frat boy look. I was obsessed with it. And I love Ellen DeGeneres' confidence, her humor, like the way she didn't let anybody tell her anything. She's like, I'm married to this woman. I mean, I did my career and I've earned my spot where I am, and this is what I'm doing. So I was like, you know what? Bet.
The L Word was out when I was younger, but I didn't watch it until actually a few years ago. So there weren't a lot of things that I could look to help me understand who I was. Not as much as there are now.
There wasn't many people out there in the media, even in like my organizations I was part of, like work or school. You didn't see many women who presented masculinity too much. And if you did, how dare you? How dare you look like that, you know? And how dare I have that as my role model? That's not what my mom and dad, you know? So it was hard navigating that, but I had to define it for myself.
What is masculinity? I've always wondered, truly, like, what is masculinity but a societal construct?
If I'm being completely honest with y'all, it's a farce. Like, it's a joke. It's this construct of masculinity and femininity, I really feel like is a game that we're playing. And I don't know why we're playing this binary game.
It is just an energy that someone has. And I think that it could also be an energy that one develops as well, the more that they get in tune with themselves.
You can be a masculine woman, a masculine man, a masculine them, a masculine they. Masculinity is just about the energy that you give off.
I'm very deeply invested in exploring masculinity as a genderless energy rather than one that's connected to an experience that's already shaped and influenced by patriarchy, influenced by heteronormativity, and we can't really harness or be responsible with its power if we only view it in hierarchy. There are no qualifications for what you need to be or do in order to be masculine, because masculinity is not solely a performance or particular aesthetic experience. It's an embodiment, and however that shows up in or for and with you, I think is the right way.
People exist, and however they exist.
Have the conversation of masculinity, but also always include like femininity, and include where they meet in the middle.
It adds fluidity to our conversation. Even within, you know, the queer community, I think it's a light switch. But it's adding to the fact that some days you can be more leaning on the masculine side, some days you can be leaning on the more feminine side, and that can change constantly. So I believe that this dialogue is important because it shows people masculinity doesn't have to have a look, and femininity doesn't have to have a look. It's just showing that there's a spectrum of everything in regards to identity and expression.
You know, we are on that borderline of we can be all of everything. Let that line be very thin, you know, very faded, you know, because sometimes I might want to cross over it without even thinking about it, you know, which is how I live my life. I don't want to think about when I should be feminine, when I shouldn't. I used to be that way, like interviews and stuff like that, you know, corporate meetings and all that, like, how do I present myself in this meeting? How do I want them to see me? You know, oh my God, no, be yourself. That's one reason why I love my femininity. I don't suppress her. You know, I let her be her because she exists. You know, she definitely exists, just in a special way. You know, and I'm never gonna disregard who she is.
I'm not more masculine than I am feminine. So when you see me, you may see me one day and, you know, a t-shirt and, you know, something that's a little android. I may be dressed more masculine, but then you may see me dolled up, but that's me. That's what makes me feel comfortable.
I would lean more towards just freedom, being able to take up space and be unapologetic about that.
Sometimes maybe it gets tangled in itself or tangled in the influence of stuff around it, but that takes maintenance and cleaning like anything else. It takes watering like anything that grows. So I think my masculinity is an ever-expanding freedom language.
Why is this an important conversation to have? Because people don't have it. It's an important conversation to have because you never know who's listening.
Having a conversation about masculinity opens up a conversation about gender. We have a deeper understanding of gender. Don't we want to understand ourselves deeply?
It's important because I'm alive. I am a living, breathing human experience that you don't understand most often than not. I think it's deeply important that we recognize this conversation as important because many of us are also dying. Many of us are ashamed, and shame kills in and of itself. Many of us are hiding. Many of us are, being dragged on the internet for not being masculine enough. When we recognize masculinity in someone, I implore everyone to get to know that masculinity. Don't pick the masculinity off the tree that you know and then come telling me I need to be taking your trash out or opening your door for you or like whatever other things may come up. I want people to interrogate their idea of masculinity and get to know masculinity in people who are masculine, say they're masculine, and not assume what you think you know about them already. If a person says they're masculine, it doesn't mean that their favorite color is blue or that they like giving strap better than taking it. They don't like receiving pleasure in certain ways. Like all of these different ideas around what masculinity comes from that internalized patriarchal impact. And I would just like people to be more curious. I want people to recognize and be mindful of how toxic masculinity has manifested in the world, how we have the legacies of harm that have been shaped by this toxic masculinity culture. When we're talking about systemic impact, toxic masculinity as language is specifically talking about how masculinity as a culture regarding, through the lens of patriarchy, speaks to the abuse of power through the use of masculine energy, and by men specifically.
The world is afraid of men. The world is afraid of men. Men have been harmful. I think that's the scariest fucking thing in the world, is that all of those things that I said, is that they're true. But I think that anyone can be harmful.
I think folks, if they want to be considered allies to masculine folks, they have to believe us when we say we've been harmed.
We've built this structure of a world where we've made the choice that because of your build, how you carry yourself, and the stock of privilege in which we've given men, that is equating to power, and it shouldn't.
Masculine privilege meaning that there is a way that I overlap with a particular culture that says it is not possible for you to be raped, it is not possible for you to experience a particular kind of harm, because men don't. There's not that room for men, because that means soft, that means weak, and that is associated with femininity.
The thing that sucks about the Me Too movement is it was so framed through women.
How we've constructed or been conditioned to understand a victim is through a feminine lens. So as I navigated my masculinity, I'm like, I have to be accountable to the fact that as a masculine person, there is still an edge of like, you're stronger, faster, tougher, whatever, because that's just how we're conditioned.
There was like this uproar of feminism in this way that was like only through the lens of women, and women feeling oppressed by men.
Men are being raped, and there's non-consensual touch, and there is, as it is for my body, but because of the consequence of that regarding men, I find myself then just falling under the umbrella of that consequence. It's like a trickle-down effect. It's like, men can't be raped, men can't be this, and then men and masculinity are coupled. So anything that's considered masculine or inviting masculinity into our lives, we then kind of are left in the murky waters of male consequence.
And I think that that's confusing to me through my story and my experience, when I feel like I've been particularly harmed by women.
Masculine privilege as a framework of accountability has to include the nuance of the things that I do not benefit from. And that's so that we can have equitable space for justice and to talk about the violences that harm us as well. Like, we are not without being raped, but there's no statistic that says, hey, queer masculine people, trans masculine people are being raped at this rate, because it's still under that space of like, actually, y'all are not being harmed.
When it comes to feelings and emotion and hurt, trauma, pain, masculine folks seem to have to overqualify, like have to answer a whole bunch of questions. and aren't readily believed. Not to say that doesn't happen for other folks, but it's just believe us. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that for me is really important, just to be believed the first time.
I don't see a lot of space for like the narrative of like trans mass folks to come forward about Me Too.
I think that accountability takes recognizing that we miss some steps and we overlook some people because patriarchy said men are supreme. This is how men support and deserve to be on a platform pedestal. They're smarter, faster, make more money, all these things. Patriarchal masculinities don't even serve men. So if we deconstruct that, we can actually get to the root of some of the, I believe, get to the root of some of the harms that also create the imagery and facade of what patriarchal masculinities are trying to put out there.
Check on your masculine friends and masculine folks that are around you. Like, really check on them. Be tender with them. Be tender with us. Because it's hard sometimes for us to be tender with ourselves.
The advice to give someone who is working through understanding their own masculinity, don't be scared.
Go through the trial and error of things and see what you like and what you don't like, because at the end of the day, it's about you and what you like and what makes you happy.
Play with your masculinity. Don't be limited by what you think society decides your masculinity is, right? You get to decide.
Always be yourself. Like, just be yourself. Be you. I don't care how awkward it is, how weird it is, who's going to disown you.
Whenever you're choosing to express yourself, always be comfortable and don't try and think about what everybody else is doing. And it's hard because everybody says that. We've heard that so many times throughout our lives, but it helps knowing that I'm stepping out of the house and I feel comfortable with what I'm wearing. I have the confidence, and that's really all that matters.
It's hard, family. It's hard. But there are those of us out here that want to be in community with you, chosen family with you, because we need each other. We won't survive trying to pull on patriarchal masculinities or going up against religion inside our families, or not having supportive community structures in order for us to push through. So I would say, you know who you are already. What you are fearful of is how to be your full self in the conditions that you're serving. So I would say keep going. I would say take it one day at a time. And one day that shit is gonna break, you know what I'm saying? And you're gonna care less about how people see you and more about how you want to be seen or taken up. You'll set boundaries with people. Some people you're gonna have to let go of, and that's hard, but chosen family picks up the slack of biological family that's lost. I'm a witness to that.
You will find your tribe. You'll find your people. You'll find the people that love you. You will find the people that you resonate with. You'll find the people that identify with you. So just keep on pushing.
You have to remember, people are gonna talk regardless.
It's a scary situation. I know it is. But I promise you, it's only in this moment. Don't be scared. By the time you get to where you want to get to, you'll be so much more happier. So much more, I think that's how you say it. You'll be so much more happier, and you'll honestly look back and reflect on a lot of things, and you'll really trip yourself out like, I could have really just did this a long time ago.
What's stopping you from being your authentic self? What's stopping you from pushing your mind beyond the gender binary?
It's not one set thing. Masculinity isn't this set thing. It's this set thing that we've decided to create to play these roles, right? To feed this system. But what happens when we recognize that the system doesn't serve us?